Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. Thanks for joining me once again. I gotta say, I am still recovering from the con crud that I picked up at Gamehole Con last weekend. So my sinuses are still blown out. My voice is raspy. But I'm going to power on through because I really want to share today's review with you. But before I get into that review, I do want to remind you, if you enjoy the Gaming Gang and you'd like to support the outlet, you can do so in a few ways. First, by utilizing our affiliate links to the One Bookshelf sites, such as DriveThruRPG, Storyteller's Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, etc. And to do so, simply visit gaminggang.com, click on one of our banners. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale. You can also make a one-time donation by way of PayPal or become a monthly member of our Patreon. You'll find links in the show notes. Also, down in those show notes, you'll find an invite link to our Discord server. It's absolutely free, so be sure to hang with the gang over on Discord. Today, I'll be sharing my review of the Old Gods of Appalachia role-playing game from Monte Cook Games. This is written by Shanna Germain, and the 418-page hardcover is available now. Carries an MSRP of $69.99. The PDF is normally $22.99 over at DriveThruRPG, but as I record this, you still have a few days to take advantage of the Halloween sale and score the PDF for only $15.86. Having said all that, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the Old Gods of Appalachia role-playing game. A few things to mention before we get stuck in. First of all, my friends at Monte Cook Games were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a really good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, there are a couple of short adventures which conclude this book. So if you're a player and your game master has picked up Old Gods of Appalachia, maybe they just haven't started running it yet, maybe they're talking about picking this up. Keep in mind, even though I'm going to stay spoiler free, you may see some things that ruin the surprises of those adventures, so please keep that in mind. Of course, if your game master is kicking around picking this up, by all means, let them know about this review. That way they can approach the Old Gods of Appalachia role-playing game and make a far more informed buying decision. First thing we're going to do is take a peek at the credits page. A lot of folks worked very hard to bring this to life, so let's give credit where credit is due. If you're not familiar with Old Gods of Appalachia, it is a horror podcast. It premiered, I believe, back in 2019. It is rural horror. It's got a bit of cosmic horror. I know some folks refer to that genre as hillbilly horror. I'm not going to use that term because some folks feel hillbilly is derogatory. Some people don't mind it at all. They actually wear that as a badge. But what I'm going to refer to this as is horror from the hollers. This is set in 1930s Appalachia in the midst of the Great Depression. So that plays a lot into both the stories in the podcast as well as the role-playing game. First question a lot of people are going to have: how well-versed do they have to be with the podcast in order to either play or run Old Gods of Appalachia? And my answer to that is not at all. I have only listened to a couple of episodes. I enjoyed them. I thought they were pretty cool. But I am no expert by any stretch of the imagination with the podcast, and I could easily see myself running Old Gods of Appalachia for my gang. And I got to say, that is a major credit to the author, Shanna Germain, because we see a lot of IPs that make their way over to role-playing games. And a lot of times, if you're not intimately familiar with that IP, you're completely lost. That is certainly not the case here. Now, of course, Old Gods of Appalachia is built on the Cypher system. This is a complete core rule book. This is not a genre book. So this is the only thing you need in order to run Old Gods of Appalachia. It's very important for you to know. Now, if you're not familiar with Cypher system, I have gotten into quite a bit of detail about the mechanics in other reviews, especially the Cypher system core rulebook review I did not too long ago. But I will kind of touch on it a bit. I'm not going to go into a lot of depth, but rather than force you to go watch some other video, kind of give you a heads up. So it is built on D20, but it is unlike other D20 driven role-playing games. So there are different difficulty tiers ranging from 1 to 10, 1 being pretty simple, 10 being nigh impossible. And the game master is going to determine a difficulty for what the player, character, or characters are attempting to achieve. Going to multiply that by 3. That is the number that needs to be rolled equal to or higher than on a 20-sided die in order to succeed. Now, a little quick math is going to make you realize that, well, that means difficulty 7 is impossible. You can't roll a 21 on a 20-sided die. Well, one of the key points of Cypher system is the players utilizing their player character abilities, using their attribute pool points, teaming up together to cooperate in order to lower the difficulty tier of what they're trying to do. So it is completely possible to take a difficulty tier 10 down to a 6, which now means you can achieve what you're looking to do, even if it's nigh impossible. So I like that a lot with Cypher system. I dig Cypher system. It is a narrative built game. It is not necessarily a rules light game, but the key mechanics to the game are easy to wrap your head around. There are some various different moving parts, so I don't say it's a rules light game, but it's certainly not a very heavy game either mechanically. So as far as the characters, when you're creating a character, first thing you got to do is come up with a concept. Come up with a concept, the sort of player character you want to run. And you're going to look at 3 different things. So first of all, we start off with descriptors. So one of the famous aspects of Cypher system is that your player character is an adjective, noun, that verbs. And that might not make a hell of a lot of sense to you when you hear it that way. But the reality is you're going to take a descriptor, you're going to build it onto an archetype, and then you're going to add a focus, or the plural foci, here in Old Gods of Appalachia. So you have a bunch of different descriptors. And of course, if you have other Cypher system books, those have descriptors too that you can utilize. But once again, everything's built into the core book. You don't need any other supplements. But if you do, it's going to give you a lot more options as long as thematically they fit. So as an example, we've got clever, clumsy, honorable, graceful, educated, and so forth. So that is your descriptor. Then we get into our archetype, and we've got archetypes like the protector, the speaker, the sage. And even though we have 4 archetypes, you might think, hey, you know what? That really narrows the kind of character that I can play. Interestingly enough, that's not the case, because with the descriptors and the focus, and the archetypes are pretty broad anyway, you're going to find that you really can custom craft the sort of player character you want to have at the table. So I'll give you an example here. So we've got our descriptors. So let's say we have a speaker character. That's one of the archetypes. So sometimes they're referred to as the face of the group, right? They're the charismatic character that people like. They're able to convince people to do things they want them to do. So let's say maybe our descriptor is clever. So if a clever speaker who calls home the hounds, to say you have a way with animals and non-human creatures doesn't begin to cover it. Your ability to communicate with and connect to them is positively uncanny. There's something about you that makes beasts not just trust you, but want to work alongside you to be your friend and ally. You feel like you understand them too, perhaps finding a little something in them that you also find in yourself. And that makes your bond even closer. So, right there, that's a pretty cool player character because everybody likes them. People, animals, babies, everybody. Pretty sweet. Now, we also have tiers, and you don't look at tiers as levels because a tier 1 character is very competent, and a tier 4 character is not a demigod by any stretch of the imagination, but there is character advancement. As far as our pools for attributes, they're not a 3 to 18 range like we would see in most D20 role playing games. So we have pool points, which shows the focus of the character. And I don't mean the focus as far as the foci, but what the character aims to do. So we have might, speed, and intellect. And funny enough, you could have a couple of player characters who both have a might of 14 who are radically different. And that is another very interesting aspect of Cypher System. Now, those pool points are actually used to activate abilities. They're used to provide effort, which lowers the difficulty tier of things you're trying to do. So one aspect of Cypher System that some people don't like is the fact that your pool points are also tied into your health. So as you spend pool points, you're more susceptible to injury, like in combat. And I get it. I understand why some people don't like it. I think part of it is mainly because they don't want that sort of resource management in the game. Possibly. I don't mind it so much, but I do want to point out recently Monte Cook Games did kickstart a new edition of Cypher System. It's simply going to be called Cypher, and that's being addressed. So the ability points and your health are going to be two different things. You don't have hit points, you have basically a damage track with Old Gods of Appalachia. So you're also squishy because you're just regular folk. You're not superheroes or anything like that. You're, I guess the terminology maybe in Appalachia would be you're simple folk. I don't mean simple minded folk. I just mean you're regular people. And probably your biggest concern on a daily basis is staying alive and feeding your family and having a roof over your head. Because once again, this takes place during the Depression. So as far as the character creation, about 100 pages devoted to that. Then we're going to get into our rules of the game, which is all of about 35 pages. As I mentioned, Old Gods of Appalachia is not a rules heavy game, but it also is a little tricky with certain aspects. Now, we also have the ciphers. We've got ciphers and artifacts. Ciphers are where Cypher System gets its title. Ciphers are like one use bonuses that the characters get. Ciphers kind of throw some people off as far as game mastering, you know, when you give them, how you present them. And I can see that. I think ciphers can be trickier depending on the genre of game that you're playing. Here, I think it works okay. Here, I don't think it's going to be that big a problem. And of course, we get loads and loads of different ciphers as well as different artifacts for the game master to utilize. I would say one of the big selling points of Old Gods of Appalachia is the setting. The setting itself. I have only been through the region a handful of times driving through. I've stopped for gas. I've had something to eat. but I've never spent the night, spent really any time outside of just driving on through. So I'm certainly not an expert on the region, but reading through this feels right. I could be absolutely wrong on that, but it does feel as if there's a familiarity with the region for Shauna Germain. Maybe she just did a lot of research. I don't know. But this does feel, yeah, it feels on the money. It really does. Also think it's cool that we get the region broken down by state. So we have various different locations and bizarre, weird goings on that is taking place. Now, as I mentioned, there's some cosmic horror. There's kind of folkloric horror going on. There's kind of a sense of dread, rising dread that as a game master, you really want to bring forward in your tales. Like almost like kind of a systemic rot that's just eating away at, the underlying community. Now, having said that, it's also important to keep in mind this is not some sort of a grim, dark role playing game. Your player characters, your NPCs, they have hope, they have dreams, they're looking to better their lives. And if that means having to go toe to toe with some occult elements, some supernatural elements, well, so be it. So, pretty cool. One way I would describe this would be if you're familiar with The Color Out of Space by H.P. Lovecraft. And keep in mind, this is not a Cthulhu Mythos role playing game at all. As a game master, you want to sprinkle some in, fine, you can do it. But that's not this setting. But if you're familiar with The Color Out of Space, if you throw away the god awful dialogue, that is the sense that you want to present as a game master of, something's just not right. And the longer you're around it, the more you realize something just ain't right. So I also want to point out, if you're familiar with the movie The Curse, I think in the mid 80s, I mean, it's really kind of an awful movie, but it also does have that just creeping dread sense of something's going to go really wrong at some point in the future. And that is kind of a tough thing to pull off at the game table. And I think that Old Gods of Appalachia actually does it pretty well. There are a lot of great tips in here for game mastering Old Gods of Appalachia as well. We do have an extensive bestiary. Now, something also to keep in mind if you're not overly familiar with the Cypher system, as far as our stat blocks for NPCs, creatures, monsters, spirits, haints, and such, they're not really extensive. They're not like page upon page upon page of information about one particular thing, which does make this pretty easy for a game master to run at the table because they don't need to study multiple pages about something. Here's an example of some of the artifacts. As I said, we've got loads of ciphers. We've got loads of artifacts too. But as an example, here are some of the haint spirits and other revenants. So we got the blank-eyed man. We will have references to different episodes of the podcast throughout with these side boxes here. And that's going to tell us about it. And then right here, this is the information that we need as a game master to run this. Do you need to study each and everything here? No, of course not. Because it's going to tell us different things like, how do you use this? Or what environment would you find this in? I also should mention, we do have some additional supplements for Old Gods of Appalachia. I just shared a first look at the first, which is Dig Your Own Grave, which is player facing. And then just recently, I don't even think it's out in print yet. I think they're taking pre-orders. It's All Your Gods Are Dead, and that is Game Master facing. But as you can see, pretty extensive bestiary here. As far as production quality, really nicely done. Paper stock is very, very solid. Artwork throughout, I really dig quite a lot. I will say, I am kind of surprised. There's a lot of artwork in here that's very small, that's been reproduced really small, like on these sidebars and stuff. So I kind of feel like we're missing out a little bit on some of the awesome artwork. We're used to kind of seeing, half page, sometimes a full page. We don't really see too much of that throughout. But we're going to also have a couple of adventures to wrap up. And I feel that both of these adventures do a really solid job of not only introducing the players to this setting, but also providing the game master with a lot of things to kind of chew on outside of just what's in the adventure. A lot of ways that the game master can kind of expand upon these, even if it's just things that are kind of mentioned in passing. So I like that quite a bit as well. We wrap up with some resources, our index, character sheet, and that is a peek inside Old Gods of Appalachia from Monte Cook Games. Let's swing on over to the other camera so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. As far as production quality, really, really well done. It's what I've come to expect now from Monte Cook Games. Really solid paper stock. Artwork throughout is excellent. Sadly, though, some of the artwork is reproduced as pretty small images. So I think we're missing out on enjoying some fantastic artwork. But that's kind of a minor quibble. This is a book that's going to really hold up at your game table. Of course, unless you abuse it, then it probably won't. As far as the setting itself, I find it very unique. I'm not familiar really whatsoever with Old Gods of Appalachia. I listened to a couple of episodes of the podcast. That means absolutely nothing. And I think it is a major achievement that you don't need to know anything about the podcast in order to both enjoy playing and game mastering this role-playing game. I got to be honest, I think it would probably be more important that the game master, maybe the players a little bit, have some familiarity with the region as opposed to the podcast. Pretty cool there. Now, of course, as far as the actual genre, I'm a big fan, but then again, keep in mind, I've been running Call of Cthulhu for over 40 years. So that means I am into the whole cosmic horror, the folkloric horror, the horror from the hollows, as I've coined it earlier in the video. So that might not be everybody's bag of tricks, and I certainly do understand that. But I really dig the whole, something's not right here. Something is very wrong, but I just don't know what it is. And we'll just peel back layer after layer of the mystery. I think that is really very nicely presented here in the rule book. Now, of course, speaking of rules, this is built on Cypher System, and I know there are a lot of folks out there who are huge fans of Cypher System, and there are other folks out there who are, let's say, not huge fans of Cypher System. And Old Gods of Appalachia is not going to change either party's minds, because as far as the mechanics, the rules, they're pretty much identical to the current edition of the core rulebook. I don't really have a problem with that because I understand Cypher System games are designed to be driven by narrative, not necessarily mechanics. But I do also understand how there is confusion with ciphers, not necessarily the most intuitive thing out there. And there are other people who don't like the fact that the ability pools are tied into the actual health of the player character too. They don't want that sort of resource management. Doesn't click with them. I completely get that. Once again, I don't really have an issue with that, though. I got to say, this is my favorite of the standalone rule books that I have found for games based on Cypher System, although the reality is this is the second I've reviewed. So it's not like I've reviewed a ton of them, but I really dig Old Gods of Appalachia. I think this is just a fantastic achievement by Monte Cook Games. I'm going to mention it once again. It is not easy to bring an IP over to a role-playing game and then make it where you don't need to know anything about that IP in order to not only play the game, but also run the game. I think that's fantastic. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give Old Gods of Appalachia role-playing game a 9.5 out of 10. Oh, so close to the 10. Oh, so close. Just missed it. Still, 9.5, that's a hell of an achievement. Very nicely done. All right, that is it for this time out. Of course, if you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. Because not only is it supposed to notify you when I share videos such as this review, it'll also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings right here on YouTube at 7 p.m. Central. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thank you very much for watching and putting up with my nasally voice. And of course, until I see you next time, I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.